Hi everyone, welcome to Hume Module 5.
Last Hume Module.
Yes, the last one. Just to quickly recap, so we know that Hume has attacked Locke's and other philosophers' ideas that that we are conscious of a self, and said that there's no such idea like this of the self, and that instead we're a bundle of perceptions.
Yep.
So it's at the very start. He then goes on and is like, well, why do we bloody try and ascribe identity to things generally, in terms of objects and plants and random stuff, but also
Animals.
ultimately, why do we ascribe identity to these perceptions or to our mind or our identity or something?
Persons.
Yeah. And he also goes through all those examples which are to show that our mind does always kind of confuse identity with diversity and
Yep.
Places or ascribes, again, identity to quite diverse objects. Cool.
All right, so you'll remember from one of the earlier modules how Hume says, okay, first I'm going to start by considering the identity of plants, animals, and objects.
Yes,
Remember
why
that?
we ascribe identity to those things.
That's right, yep.
Yeah.
And he goes through all those different examples. I think we looked at 6 examples of why he ascribes why humans tend to ascribe identity to those things incorrectly. So he's gone through all of that, and finally he's now bringing it back to personal identity.
Yep.
So he's basically saying, you'll remember he said there was an analogy between plants and animals and
Yep.
objects and personal identity, and here he's just making that even more explicit. He's saying, "'Tis evident the same method of reasoning must be continued with personal identity as we've already used."
Yep.
So basically, just like identity was fictitious, as in made up, with plants, animals, and objects, so it is also fictitious with the mind of man.
Cool.
And, our idea of identity, again, proceeds from a mistake.
So this is very much recapping things that he's already talked about. So he's basically saying that identity is kind of a construct that we come up to unite these different kind of things. It's something that our ideas and thinking and imagination does, and that we base this construct or this uniting quality on relations, and in particular these 3 possible ones of resemblance, contiguity, or causation.
So the question that he starts considering now is which one of those 3 relations is the main source of our idea of personal identity in humans. So, he's already said that these 3 relations of association, what are they? Resemblance, contiguity, and causation. They are kind of at the root of the mistakes that we make about identity. Because
Yep.
for example, if 2 things resemble each other, we often confuse them and think they're identical.
Yep.
Yep. So his question now is, which one is the most powerful when it comes to our mistakes about the mind of humans,
Yep.
the mind of man?
And so down the bottom there he gets rid of contiguity. So that's why we don't worry about that one so much and focus on resemblance and causation.
Yep.
Okay, so the first one of these relations he's going to deal with is resemblance. And basically, a really key thing here is that he's drawing in this idea now of memory as well. So this is going to be a key concept that we're going to have to take some notes on at some point. But he's drawn in memory, and he's saying, so let's imagine that I'm sitting here right now with Misfits and perceiving her, having all these wonderful sensory perceptions of her as she sits here, and I take those into my mind and I create a memory of them, and it sits there. And then tomorrow we have some disastrous falling out over, I don't know, spilt milk. And then we do not see each other for 10 years.
Goodness
and
me.
I lay my eyes on you and I'm like, who is that odd-looking woman? That's not remotely true. And then, as in, you're not odd-looking. I tried to redeem it with a compliment. And then I lay eyes on her and I go, oh, and I flash back to that memory that I have, and I see you there in that memory, and I see you there in front of me, and there's a resemblance between the two.
Yep.
Based on that, and that
Yep.
relation leads me to go, it's Lizzie Fitzgerald. Like, God
Yep.
knows what has happened to you in that 10 years. You could have gone and lived in Africa.
Yep.
Somewhere in Africa.
Yep.
and had all these different life experiences, and you could be completely different.
But
And
there's still some level of resemblance.
you could have lost
there.
an arm even.
I could
Okay?
have.
Yes.
I
Okay.
hope
So
not.
physically, you could be hugely different.
Yep.
And I'm still going to be like, there's something there, and I'll give you that identity based on those memories.
Yep.
Okay? And so here in this bottom quote, he's saying a very Lockean idea of the memory not only discovers the identity, so it's not only, we were saying that's kind of like evidence of identity, so memory doesn't not only evidence of an identity, but it even possibly produces the identity.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, so we might need to explain the difference between discovering something and producing something.
Yeah, so we were saying before that discovering equals, or is similar to like evidence of something, so providing evidence
Yeah.
to allow you to discover this
Yep.
identity,
Yep.
or actually producing it, so being the source of it. So,
Yeah.
like Locke would say, memories leading to personal identity, he's saying, well, maybe if this is what happens, then these memories could be leading to identity. But we've got to make clear, this is his shitty construct, sorry,
Whoa.
swearing, his bad construct identity, okay? The identity we create because we're lazy and our mind goes there to help us make
So
things simpler. And
I
think
need
about
you to
things.
explain this one more. I'm struggling with this. Like,
Yeah.
So he's saying that this idea of we have memories of
Mhm.
someone and therefore we give them an identity.
Yep.
So that's one
Well,
of
we
the
have
mistakes.
memories and there's resemblance in those memories, and then we give identity.
Okay, so that's one of the mistakes where our mind transitions
Yes.
between two diverse things.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep. So Hume has said that the memories that we have can resemble each other, right? And therefore they can lead into us attributing identity to stuff.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So here he's talking about the other relation of causation, and he's talking about memory, how memory relates to causation, right? So basically what he's saying is the mind, or what we imagine to be the mind, it contains a lot of memories, and whenever we think of one memory, that can often cause us to then think of another thing,
Yeah.
right? So all our memories are linked together by cause and effect.
Yeah.
And they all mutually produce, destroy, influence, and modify each other. So the ideas that we've covered so far in this module are quite confusing, I think, and I guess we'll have to go into them in more detail in class. But my understanding of what he's arguing in this module is as follows, okay? I'm going to just sum up a bit here. So at the beginning of this module, he said, remember he asked the question, which one of these three relations is responsible for the mistakes we make when we ascribe an identity to the human mind? Is it resemblance, is it contiguity, or is it causation? He got rid of contiguity and he went on to talk about resemblance and causation. And I think he's basically saying both of these relations are at fault when we consider the identity, the supposed identity of a human mind. Now, the reason why resemblance is at fault is because most of the kind of perceptions that we experience as humans are memories. A lot of them are memories unless we're directly experiencing something right now. Yep. So if we have these memories, then these memories are going to resemble each other and make... so that's going to cause our imagination to go between these memories and assume that they come from the same source. Right? So that's why resemblance is at fault. Causation is also at fault because the memories kind of seem to cause one another, right?
Yep.
If we have one memory, it might bring to mind another memory and so on. And this relation also confuses our imagination into thinking that the memories are linked by an identity.
Yep.
So Hume here is kind of saying, all of these tricks that I guess our memories cause us to play on ourselves, would make a lot of people, such as Locke, think that memory is the source of personal identity.
Yep, cool.
I think he's ultimately disagreeing with this.
Okay, so he's going to quickly dismiss that idea that some people argue that memory is the source of personal identity by raising something that we looked at when we looked at with Locke. So basically the memory loss, what would you call
Objection?
it? Objection. Yep. So if you permanently lose memory of a particular event, then how are you going to prove that there's still that connection and that chain of memories to make you the same person? Okay?
Yep.
And he doesn't answer that. He just says, it's on you. Clearly this is an issue for you. You have to answer it. It's on you now.
If you're going to keep saying that memory is the source of personal identity, you have to deal with the idea, the fact that we sometimes lose memory.
Yeah. I think it's really important here to remember his key thing, that identity is just this silly construct that we come up with, okay? That all you can actually prove is this bundle of perceptions. I know it gets really confusing because he goes on about all these relations that actually are quite realistic, okay? And he talks about them a lot, but he's only talking about it because he just wants to have some philosophical babble about why we do give identity to things, okay?
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that this identity is real or important. He just wants to know why we do it. Remember, the core of it is that identity is rubbish, and that all we are is perceptions. Right? So a lot of this can come across quite confusing, but he's just here, all he's doing is just having this conversation about, well, identities, there's no such thing as identity, but we still talk about it. Why do we still talk about it? And in the case of the human mind, which is what all this podcast has been about, it's because we have these memories and that we see in them resemblance and cause and effect, which makes us think there is an identity. That identity is silly, okay? But basing identity on memory is silly because you can forget things, is what he's saying here. But identity is silly. We got to just hold on to that.
Now we're going to leave you to read this slide because here are a few concluding quotes from Hume, which basically go along with the point that Tim just made. He's concluding here by summing up his idea that identity depends on the relations of ideas and the fact that these relations just make our minds move easily from one idea to another. And this is just a big trick that our so-called minds are playing on us. Identity is a fallacy. And I want you to just quickly focus on this last word in the slide, simplicity. I think he says that identity comes down to simplicity. And look, I think it's up for debate what he means by this, but I think he's basically saying it feels easy for us to give things identity. It feels simple.
Cool.
Right? And that's why we do it.
Okay. In a convoluted way, that is Hume done and dusted.
Well done.
Woo-hoo.